right, so now we're going to go through the song page. This is where most of your work is going to be done. This is going to be the spot where the creation happens. So it's really important to understand the different areas. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go through a basic tour. And if you look at the bottom, you can see there we're going to be looking at the event, view, the browser, inspector, editor, toolbar, and of course the transport. So how do we create a song? So if you want to get your song moving, you need to click on new song. And I think in this case, we're going to go ahead and just create an empty song first off for the first couple of areas that I'm going to show you. So let's see. So the first thing that you want to do, actually the next thing that you want to do is you want to go ahead and give it a title. This is important because if you go with the default title, you can end up with a lot of folders with names that you don't know what the actual songs are. So since we really don't have an idea for the song, we're going to call this my first song. Just like that, and I'm going to click OK. So here's my first song. If we go back to the song page, or the start page, I'm sorry, if we go back to the start page, you're going to say, where's my song I just created? Okay, it's not going to add it to this list until you finally save it. So let's go File, and let's say Save. But it won't let me save. Why won't it let me save? Well, because we haven't done anything in the song yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a track. So we're going to click on the little plus sign right here. And of course, there are many ways to create a track. This is the easiest to start with, and I'll be going through more options in later videos. I'm going to click the plus sign, and it opens up the track dialog box. So you can see here that we have the ability to name this track. We're just going to leave it at audio. I'm just going to take away the 2 there. I'm just going to make it audio. And I'm going to make the type an audio track. You have the ability to make an instrument track. You have the ability to make an automation track or a folder track, but we're going to stick with audio. We're going to choose the color, so we can take the check mark out and we can actually choose whatever color we want to make it. Let's go say, you know what, let's go ahead and make it yellow. There we go. You have a yellow track, or we can use the auto color, whatever we want to do. So we have to decide whether we want this to be a mono or a stereo track. So to start with, since I'm only using a single mic, I'm going to leave it at mono. I have the ability to choose a stereo track, but it's important to understand that even after you create the track, you can change all of this information with no problem. Okay, we're not going to be using a preset, and that would be like a preset with certain effects. We're not going to be using that. And we're going to choose input 1, which is this microphone that you're hearing right now. And then, of course, the main out should always be selected, at least to start with, so that you can hear what plays back in Studio One. So let's go ahead and click OK, and there is my track. Let's see if I actually have a save option now. And I do. There we go. So I just saved the song. I can actually expand this. Boy, you know, that's a terrible color. How can I change that color? Well, if you click on the little sidebar here, it's going to open up a color palette. Let's go back to red, because that was a lot easier to see. All right, so we're back to the red track, just like that. And now if we go back to the start page, there we go. My first song is in the list, and I can go ahead and put a little push pin right there so that I can actually keep track of the song as the list grows. Okay, you don't have to do that. I usually do that with new songs that I create. You can see that I'm working on other projects and songs here. So I have them marked. Okay, so now how do I get back to the song page? Oh my God, I forgot how to get back to the song page. And boy, I'll tell you, when I'm in a hurry, I forget this. So I'm going to click the song button right here. There's also an option if you have several songs open, which I do, and this other song here will be for another part of the example that I'm going to have in this video, you can actually choose, you can have many songs open, and it doesn't take up any CPU. It only takes up CPU with the song that's open. Important to remember that, but we're going to go with my first song, and there we go. We're back here on this right here. So if you are actually looking at the song, you can see here I have an audio track opened up. up here are some of our control windows. This is for everything from automation to external devices, controls, and things like that. This is my toolbar. These are some settings for the song itself. We're going to go through those here in a second. And these are some of the not so much tools, but other settings. If you hold your mouse over anything, you can actually see a little dialog pop up. That is to toggle the snap. This one is to toggle the ripple edit. This is to toggle the cursor if it follows the song position or not. Then you have this one here. This is for the scratch pad. A lot of you guys are going to love the scratch pad when I get there. And then here is the video player, just like that. So that is the top bar here and all the tools. We're going to go through some of these tools here in a real basic form here in a few seconds. So then here you can choose the start page. You can choose the start page if you have a project open, which we don't. And then you can choose the show page, which we also don't have open right now. This is the browser. And this is what is called the event view. So now, since we have kind of a general understanding on what this is, let me go into a little more detail here. I'm going to go to the other songs. I'm going to show you how to switch between two songs. So now here's another song. Boom. Now you can see here that I have actually created some audio tracks already so that I can show you some of the edit windows. So this is just a little, I believe this is a piano part and a little scratch vocal. One more word to tell myself I've never gone away. There we go. So that's just something basic with an instrument track and an audio track so I can show you the edit windows. Okay, so let's get in just a little bit deeper with some of this stuff. And like I said, there'll be more videos that dig even deeper into these subjects. These are to get you going. These first batch of videos is just to get you going so you can start recording right away. Okay, so what do we have here? So let's go ahead and look at the inspector. This is a real important part of the song page. So if I actually close it, you can see that that is accessed by hitting the little letter I here. And if I click on that and I click on a track, you can see that once I click on the track, the upper part of the inspector turns into a list of the settings for the track. Whether you want the time base in beats, whether you want to have it grouped with another track, or whether you want to have layers. Now remember, it is going to be changing per the type of track you choose. So let's just go ahead for the instrument track right now, and it gives you the delay time. If you want to make it play a little later or a little sooner, you can have it follow the chord track, another great feature you guys are going to love. And you can actually transpose it up or down. I think if I just did this, yeah, see, I think I have to select the notes to actually do that. This is the edit page, but we'll get into that here in a second. So now you have the velocity. You have the ability to choose the velocity at which the notes will play on the track. I usually keep this at 0% and let the performance take care of the velocity. You also have retrospective record, which gives you the ability to actually kind of practice before you hit record and then actually go back in time to pull some killer performances that you felt you wished you'd recorded. And that'll be in another video. And then we have different parameters for things like the display. You have the ability to add and remove. Again, that will be in another video. And the note effects like the arpeggiator, which you can find in the browser in the note effects area, arpeggiator, quarter. And then you have the input filter and then the repeater. These are all going to be fantastic lessons. You guys are going to like those, and those would all be inserted here. So now if I click on the event itself, it's actually already highlighted. I have full control with a mixer channel right here, the inserts and the sends. And at the bottom, you have the actual properties of the MIDI notes that are in the editor. And again, when we get deeper into that, I'll show you what all of these things do. So that is the display in the inspector for an instrument track. So now if I go to an audio track, there's a couple of extra things that aren't in the MIDI track because there's just some different things that you can do with audio. So if you look here, if I click on the audio track, you can see I have different options. I can choose that track to time stretch as I change the tempo. I can have it follow, or I can even have it not change at all. So I can set it to don't follow, and then anything that I do with the tempo will not affect this track in any way, shape, or form. However, I always keep it on time stretch, and that's the default. So if I was to go ahead and change the tempo, you can see that the audio track and the MIDI track are stretching together, keeping it in time stretch mode, just like that. And I had it at 120. There we go. So again, there'll be deeper videos with that coming soon. So let's see. So I got the time stretch mode to drums. That's usually the default as well, and you can choose different algorithms for time stretching if you're doing that with your track. We'll have more examples on those later. And then here's a delay setting, just like I showed you with the instrument track, being able to make the track play a few milliseconds ahead or a few milliseconds behind. That is actually good if you have audio tracks that have drum hits on them. You can actually have the drum beat push the song, or you can have it kind of behind the song without having to move the events themselves. So there we go. So let's see, you've got the tune mode, and we got this set to pretty much the default, and this is for the chord track, which we will get into. And like in the instrument track, we have a channel with the inserts and the sends all set for me. And at the very bottom, if you actually click on the event itself, not on the track, but on the event, you can see here we have a lot of things to adjust here. We can adjust the start and stop, the start and end timing. So if I roll my mouse over these numbers, I can actually change the position of the event. I can do the same thing with the end and just make it longer or shorter. I can change the file tempo, and since it was recorded in this song and the tempo was set at 120, you can see that the file tempo is 120, and that's important when you're going to be using time stretch, another subject we'll touch on later. And you can choose to speed up or slow down the track. This is like kind of time compressing and time expanding, however you want to do that, just like that. And we have the ability to tune this vocal up or down. Remember, this is audio track, so it works almost exactly like a MIDI track. So we can transpose to different keys on the keyboard, as well as just tune it like the tuning peg on a guitar. So we can just do slight little intonations. We can cut up little parts and kind of retune some of those little parts. But of course, there are some limitations there with that tuning that we'll actually hit on later. And then, of course, the gain of the track. I can turn up the volume of the track. Now, this is secondary to the mixer channel, so you can actually do your gain staging here. If you don't know what gain staging is, stay tuned, and that will be in a future video. And you have the ability to fade in. Let's see if I can do this real quick here. Fade in. You can actually see it's fading in. Or I can actually fade out. Just like that. You can also grab the actual tabs on the track to do that as well. Or the tabs on the event to do that as well. And then you have bend markers and the threshold, which we will touch on in another video. Okay, so that is the inspector. So if you are wondering what this view is called, looking at the events, it is very simple. It is called the event view. So these are events. This is an audio event, and this is a MIDI event. So if I double click on one of these events, let's double click on the MIDI event, it opens up the MIDI editor. And the MIDI editor has a lot of views. We're going to just touch on some of the basics here. You have the ability with the MIDI to actually do with standard MIDI view. That's with the blocks, just like this in the MIDI view. You have the ability to use like a drum roll option here where you can actually, or this is the drum map, where you can actually program it. For those of you that might be familiar with Cubase, this is very much like Cubase's drum editor right here. And now for the songwriters, if you have Studio One version 5, you also have this mode right here, which is the score view. And it is going to show you what it looks like musically. There are a number of settings that you need to make sure that you have set in order to get the correct view for the correct type of instrument. Again, all in future videos. So you also have the ability to print out of this. So if you're doing a drum map or a drum score for someone, you've actually created it in MIDI, and you go ahead to the score view and you can print it out and give it to a drummer. And boom, you actually have someone, if you actually have someone who can read music, there you go. You don't have to worry about them playing it wrong. They just have to follow the chart. And it is a really nice feature. This is new to Studio 1.5. So if you don't have Studio 1.5 yet and something like this would be useful to you, I would really look into it. So there we go. So those are the different views in the editor. Now for audio tracks, it's a little bit different. If I click on the audio track, there we go. Boy, that looks pretty much the same as that now, doesn't it? Yes, it does. But it does have its own zoom capabilities. It also does have its own toolbox here. If I go to the event view and I click here, if I click the wheel, I get a toolbox. If I right-click in the event view, I get like a tool menu. If I do the same thing here in the edit view, I get a nice little toolbox. Not as many features for the tools if I use the wheel. And if I right-click, then I get all of the options here that I had in the upper area. The cool thing about keeping these two separate is you can have different views. This little deal right here is the data zoom, and I can actually change the way the waveform looks without adjusting its volume or affecting the mix. I have a separate one for the actual edit view, and we will get into more of these and their respective tools when we get to that part of the series. So there is the event view, there is the editor or the edit view. We also have the toolbars. Here are the toolbars for the edit view. We have the arrow tool, then we have in this particular one the range tool, the split tool, the erase tool. Then we have a draw tool or a paint tool, and then we have a mute tool. I can choose this, and I can mute the audio track if I want to. And then we have this one here. This is a special one. You guys are going to like this, the bend tool. I'll show you guys what what this particular tool does when we get to the audio bend option. And yes, you can edit audio almost exactly like MIDI to a certain degree. So then we have this. This is the listen tool, and this will let me actually click in a certain spot of a waveform. Never myself word. And you can actually just audition different parts of the audio event. Let's go back here. You have similar tools for the event view. You can see here we're in focus. You can see the blue line around it. And if I click here now, we're in focus up here. You see the blue line around the box here. So now these tools apply. Everything is pretty much the same with these tools here. Only we have a few extra ones here. We have an info view. This is really good for beginners. If you click on the question mark, there we go. Anything you hover your mouse over will actually show you if it has any editing options. So look at that. I have it over the MIDI track, and now I have it over the audio track. And then I go down here, and you can see some of these buttons have some edit options. And if I go down here, you can see the same thing. So this info view is super nice for beginners. And then the added tools that are up here, we have an audio bend option. We'll be going through that soon. We also have a strip silence option. We also have a quantize option. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is for MIDI and audio. Yes, you can quantize audio. For those of you that actually don't get into DAWs that often, and this is your first DAW, you can quantize audio within certain parameters. It's really nice to have. And then, of course, you have the macro toolbar. This is my own custom one. This is quick shortcuts that can be accessed and loaded so that you can do multiple functions at once. And that will be an awesome video once we get to that point. So if you look up here, we have the quantize options for the arrange view. We also have the time-based options for the timeline here. If I click on this, we can actually go to seconds. There we go. Now we're 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or we can actually go ahead and just stick with bars and beats. This is really good for people that are making beats. you can change the timeline, and you can have a separate timeline in one view and one in the other. Time base, I can set the edit view to seconds, and then I can set this to beats, so it's really kind of nice to be able to do that. That is very, very cool. So let's see, what else do I got here? We have the snap setup. So for things that snap to the grid, if you look really closely as I'm moving this, you can see that the event is snapping to the grid. It's snapping to these bar lines. So if I choose more like 1/8, you can see some of the lines will disappear if I zoom in, and now I'll be snapping to the 1/8. You have an adaptive snap, which is what I have it set to. So if I just go to bars, there we go. Now I got it set to that. Now it's only snapping to the 1/8 notes. Because what adaptive does, and I'll get into more of this later, what adaptive does is it snaps based on how far you're zoomed in or out. So it makes it really easy if you're doing a lot of heavy editing with different lengths of zoom or different amounts of zoom when you're actually editing tracks. So that adaptive setting is really nice. And then you got quantize and frames, but I usually keep it on adaptive. And we will be going through all the rest of these tools in other videos. I will be going through one video at a time, all of these different tools. Okay, so last but not least, we've gone through the toolbar. We haven't gone through the transport, actually. So almost last but not least, we have the browser. The browser here is for, you can view your instrument tracks. You can view your effects. You can actually view all of the any loops that you have loaded, and they are searchable. You can even browse your computer directly and just go to your desktop to look for files and drag them in directly from the desktop into your song. You can also view your SoundCloud stuff. Anything that you have loaded up in SoundCloud, let's click on this and see if it's going to load, and it does. Very, very cool. There's another spot for this too. If you go to the start page and you go here to the SoundCloud tab, I didn't point this out during the start page because I wanted to wait till the song page. If you click on this, you can actually see the songs that you have loaded up, and you can either play them from here, or in the song page, you can drag them in from your SoundCloud page. So if you have access to somebody else's SoundCloud page and they give you access to their songs and they give you editing access, you can drag in their songs and add tracks to it or do whatever you want with them as per the rules that the person that are sharing them with you have set. So it's really, really good for doing work with another musician. And I forget the word that I'm looking for there. Collaboration. Thank you. You can actually use SoundCloud to collaborate. Boy, you know, when you get older, you start losing the important words. All right. So then you have the Personas shop. This is going to let you actually choose things to purchase for Studio One. Really, really nice to be able to do that. And this is just getting better with every update. So stay tuned. This and the other option here, the Personas Exchange, they're just going to get bigger as time goes on. Exchange is for actually trading presets, drum kits, and effects chains with all of your friends or people that you collaborate with, and you can load them and copy them in there for everybody that has Personas Studio One 2C with no problem. And there's the shop, and then the pool. Any tracks that you add that you render off an audio are actually going to be in the pool, including MIDI tracks when you actually save the song. And last but not least, the transport. This is really important. This actually gives you your play, stop, record, and it gives you the normal functions like a tape deck. You got your rewind or return to zero. You've got your rewind just by little bits right there. If you press those, you can actually just kind of shoot forward while the song is playing, and it will actually go right to that part without any skips or jumps. And then you have this here. This is like a return to zero, right? Boom, just like that. And this will go to the front of the song, and this will go to the end of the song based on the markers, which we will go through in another video. And of course, you have the loop play. You can create a loop zone. You can actually turn that on, and then Studio One will cycle through this zone for as long as you have play pressed. Let me try that again. For as long as you have play pressed. That's hard to say for some people, I see. So there we go. So here are the two different counters. Not the counters, the song length. This is where the position pointer is at the beginning. You can see the left marker and then the right marker. Markers can be accessed by going up to the little hamburger up here. And you can click the marker track. And we're going to go through all of this very soon. So there we go. We have marker, and then the end marker will be at the 5-minute mark. Just like that. Yeah, it's probably way over there. But the end marker will be at the 5-minute mark, and then you can actually go ahead and cycle through this. Let me see if I can get the end marker over here. There we go. So here's the end marker, and then here is the start marker. I'll show you how I did this when we actually start talking about markers. Very cool. And then, of course, here you have two different time options right here. You can have one that actually just shows bars and beats, and then you have one that can show seconds, and you can flip between the two of them. And then this gives you an idea on how much time you have left on your hard drive. I've got a lot of room on this hard drive. I got 57 days that I can record straight through before I fill up the hard drive. So that's what that is. Then you have your song information right here. I just clicked on this, and you can reset your song information. If you get a song at 48, you can change that here. And then here you have the cache activity. So if you're rendering tracks or you're using time stretch and things like that, this will actually flash when the computer's processing and you really don't want to do anything while that's happening. And you have your performance. This gives you your CPU usage and your disk usage. You can also see what plugins you have in your song. And last but not least here is the MIDI. So if you actually have a MIDI controller going, you can see the MIDI messages that are actually going back and forth here in the MIDI device. And let's see, event view, browser, inspector, editor, toolbar, and transport. And these were just basic run-throughs to get you going. You should be able to, after the next couple of videos, which is going to be song creation and track creation, if you're watching this series in order, you should be recording in just 2 more videos and being able to edit and doing things to your tracks as it grows. So you should be moving along pretty easily if you're moving these in order. And this will complete this video, and I will see you all in the next video.